Hey, what's happening, everybody? Thanks for joining us today on Cinema Recap. Great to have you here. So, today we're going to check out a 2015 thriller drama called Stalked by My Doctor. Eric Roberts. Love him. Spoilers ahead. Albert Beck is a cardiologist by profession, but let me tell you, he's not your usual boring cardiologist. Dr. Beck is out and waiting for his date, but unfortunately she calls up and cancels on him. Ow. Leaving him quite disappointed, and he vents that disappointment out by rashly driving back home over the speed limit and constantly swearing at himself. Now, Sophie Green and Kaitlyn are seniors in high school, and they're accepted into the same college. To celebrate, they all go out with their boyfriends. Sophie's boyfriend Ryan is driving with her in the passenger seat. He pulls out his phone to respond to a text, and Sophie keeps insisting on not to text while driving. She feels anxious, and her worries result in the worst, when a car comes crashing down on them, causing a major accident. Hey boys, listen to you girls. Dr. Beck's busy, looking for his next date on his usual go-to dating site, when the nurse calls him into the ER. Sophie was brought in a critical condition, and Dr. Beck is the one to examine her. He orders the nurse for the necessary steps to proceed with the operation, and he asks Sophie a few medical questions, followed by one asking about her thoughts on sushi.
Do you like sushi?
She nods her head to say, yeah. Sophie's parents, Jim and Adrian Green, arrive feeling extremely worried about her. Her father, Jim, blames Ryan for not taking caution. And this wasn't the first time he was caught texting and driving. Dr. Beck informs her parents of an urgent operation required to save Sophie's life going forward, and they agree to it, obviously. Jim then goes and meets Ryan. Ah boy. I think he's angry at him. Jim takes Ryan's phone and throws it away. Sophie's operation is successful, and Dr. Beck informs the parents of the news. He then goes back to have a look at Sophie. He does a lot more than that. He locks that door, climbs on top of her unconscious body, and starts kissing her. Wait a second, maybe he just likes to get very close and affectionate with his patients. Let's not judge yet. Sophie's parents thank him generously for saving their daughter's life. Adrian goes ahead and places a kiss on his cheek, saying that's what Sophie would have wanted to do. Yeah, that dude's disgusting. After Sophie regained consciousness, she's asking whether Ryan had stopped by because she'd felt someone kiss her. Her parents share confused glances at each other, and Jim says that she was probably dreaming. Now Dr. Beck begins his usual morning routine by scrolling and looking into different women on dating sites. Looks like he messages a Barbara. She caught his eye, and they're already on their first date now. Barbara is swooning over him in his not-so-subtle flex about his fancy getaway home, which overlooks the Pacific. Oh, forget holding hands. Beck's over here on his first date asking her to quit her job and spend the rest of her life with him. He even brings up having some kids and sending them to a nice international school. Barbara's taken aback and a little overwhelmed now. She rejects him.
Please don't go.
However, Dr. Beck isn't really a guy who can take no for an answer. He starts screaming insults and mocks her in the middle of the restaurant,
Who do you think you are?
catching a hold of everyone's attention. Now that's a first date. Back at the hospital, Sophie's upset about Ryan not calling her back. She wonders if his distant nature was because of something her father said to him. Her mother gets out to grab some lunch, and when Sophie's alone, Doctor comes back, making his way into her room. And he offers to change her bandage, even though she explains that the nurse had already changed it in the morning. But he does it anyway, taking an ointment and applying it over her cut. Sophie's mom walks in on him, and she's concerned when she sees Dr. Beck being a little too close to her daughter. Once he gets out, she asks Sophie what he was doing, and if there was anyone else in the room at the time. Alright, at least someone's concerned with Dr. Beck's extracurricular activities. Sweet. Now later, when they bid goodbye, Sophie goes ahead and hugs Dr. Beck. When she does, Adrian is weirded out by the way he's hugging her back and keeps looking at her. Dr. Beck asks the nurse to schedule Sophie's appointment for the upcoming week. And when the nurse questions it being too soon, he's disagreeing. Now Sophie goes to visit Ryan, who was too embarrassed to face her. And Ryan talks about feeling sorry and complains about being unable to play soccer ever again. Yeah, alright pal. Your girlfriend almost lost her heart. Anyways, Dr. Beck is over here fantasizing over Sophie, coming over and spending time with him, fueling onto his infatuation with her. Starting to look like he's getting out of hand. Now the next week, Sophie gets to the hospital for her scheduled checkup. The nurse informs Dr. Beck about it, and he prepares himself by spraying some mouth freshener. Oh man, how many red flags you need on this guy? Sophie gives him a little teddy bear as a gift. Aw, and a note along with it. She asks him to read the note later. As Sophie and Adrian leave, Adrian mentions her thoughts on Dr. Beck, but Sophie's shrugging it off, assuming that her mother's being like over-dramatic. Teenagers, tell ya. Dr. Beck is reading over that note, and it's filled with an innocent, sweet, and genuine message, thanking him for saving her life and how she owes him her heart. And he takes that line as his cue to proceed on to the next move of his love life. So, he starts stalking her, drives up to her house and watches Sophie and Kaitlyn head out. He follows their car and gets into the same mall. He pretends to shop around, but he's trying to be within their line of sight. And when Sophie and Kaitlyn see him there, they call him over, trying to be nice. He then asks if he could join him, and they naively agree to it. Now when Sophie and Dr. Beck are alone, he thanks her for the teddy bear and the lovely note. He reaches out and touches her hand, weirding her out, but he persists, going on to talk about a new movie he was planning to watch and offering her to join in, ditching Kaitlyn.
I have homework that I have to make up, but thanks.
Well, Sophie denies the offer and admits that, she has homework to catch up on. Now Beck's all angry as he faces rejection by a girl once again, and this time the girl was less than half his age. Sophie tells her parents about the doctor, but Jim talks about how he's the best doctor in the business, so they should just continue consulting him. And he also tells her to just deal with the doctor's behavior for the while. But then the wife jumps at him and gets angry with his statement, so he agrees to talk to Dr. Beck about the matter. So Jim confronts the doctor about it, but he quickly denies, altering the story. He pulls out the teddy bear and the note Sophie gave, and explains how she was idolizing him as a doctor. Alright. And after which, Dr. Beck is stalking Sophie's social media accounts. He's back to watching her outside her house. When she and Adrian head out, he breaks into the house and walks around Sophie's room. Sniffing around the place and lies down in her bed, imagining and playing out his fantasies. What med school did he graduate from? Sometime later, mom and daughter get back home, and Dr. Beck's trying to get out real fast before he's caught. Someone arrives at the door now, and when Sophie has a look, it's Ryan. He asks to have a talk with her, and she lets him in and they go up to the bedroom. And now she's surprised that she sees her room's a mess, but can't question it now. Where's Dr. Beck? In her closet, peeking through, having a look at what Ryan and Sophie are up to. Ryan talks about his time at the hospital. The whole time he was waiting for Sophie to wake up and how hard he prayed for her to be okay. And then he hands her a ring, mentioning that it was inherited from his grandmother. He confesses his love to her, and as they start kissing, the doctor's tempted to interrupt him, but he stops himself. Ryan's at the hospital now for his checkup, and Dr. Beck decides to pay him a visit. His real intent was to take Ryan's phone for a while. Before he leaves the room, he steals the phone on the counter, and he texts Ryan's friend, mocking Sophie and the scar from her accident. Oh, you dirty. Later that day, Sophie starts an argument with Ryan, asking him about that text. And he's assuring her that it wasn't sent by him, and someone must have hacked his phone. Ryan eventually figures out that it was Dr. Beck who sent that text, and he goes up to Beck's house and confronts him. The doctor's here playing it dumb, and Ryan's not having it. He goes to hurt Beck, but he fights back and presses on Ryan's injured leg.
How's this feel?
Ryan shoots a text to Sophie telling her about how Dr. Beck attacked him, and she's out shopping with Kaitlyn when Dr. Beck appears from behind him and asks if she could speak with him. She did suspect him of following her, but he's denying and mentions Ryan, obviously twisting the real story. He apologizes to her about making her feel uncomfortable and hands her a gift to make up for it all. It's a doll, similar to the one Sophie owns in her bedroom. Ew. Way to go on not making it obvious. She's confused on how Dr. Beck knows about her taste and tells him that she can't accept this gift. And so his frustration gets stronger, being rejected by the same girl. Ego took a blast twice as hard. And when Sophie tells her father about it, he hits her with a,
"What do you want me to do?"
"What do you want me to do about it?" Wow, Jim, what are you talking about, bro? Damn. Adrian and Sophie go to the hospital to get Sophie's medical records, not wanting to associate themselves with Dr. Beck ever again. Just then, the doctor approaches him, and he's asking for them to speak to him privately, but Adrian strongly refuses
There's nothing to discuss.
and tells him to just stay away from her daughter at all costs. There we go, another woman that tells him no. So, Beck's into the medical history of Adrian now, because the ego's dwindling. And he finds out about her allergies and her medications list. Uh-oh. He then alters that medication and ships it to Adrian's house. Wow. And as a result, Sophie comes home the next day to find Adrian on the floor. She drives her to the hospital immediately. And once stabilized, the doctor examining her tells Dr. Beck about how Adrian had an allergic reaction, and he's all pretending to be surprised. So now Sophie's out for her new college tour. Nice. She's walking back to her car to head home and, Beck grabs her from the back and presses chloroform into her face. But Sophie's quick to react, popping him with her elbow, giving her time to run to the car and make an escape. YouTube self-defense can come in handy. Dr. Beck picks up her dropped phone and follows her vehicle. He collides with her, blocking her way, and then breaks her car windows. When Sophie's parents start to get tense about her not getting home, the police arrive. They find that the car was set on fire, announcing her death. Now her parents go to the hospital to identify her burnt body. A ring remained on her finger. Meanwhile, Dr. Beck has Sophie, body and mouth, tied up on his bed, and he talks to her about his fondness for her, as Sophie lets out these muffled cries. Now showing off the fake passport he got her, he tells him about the getaway he's planned for the two of them. So obviously the body that Sophie's parents had identified was set up by Dr. Beck. He planned it all, the car crash, the fire, everything. And now her parents are mourning over their daughter's death, unaware of the truth. Ryan visits them and Adrian hands over the ring that they've removed from her body. But he takes a closer look and tells her that this isn't the same ring as his grandmother's. So he gives that information to the hospital, not ready to let go of the problem. Believing that there's something more, he asks Adrian for her help to figure this one out. And when Ryan explains his suspicions to Jim, he doesn't fail his bad parenting act and just screams
Ryan,
at him.
enough with the conspiracy theories.
He tells him to quit making up these theories. But you know what? Ryan's not convinced. So Adrian and himself decide to drive up to Dr. Beck's house. Now they walk into the house, and Ryan starts searching the place. But the doctor was a step ahead of the game. He hid Sophie the minute he saw Ryan and Adrian approach the house. Sophie's lying unconscious in a trunk by his bed. Ryan doesn't find any signs of his girlfriend. So close. Adrian apologizes to the doctor, and just as they step outside, Sophie begins to regain consciousness and starts banging on the trunk, but it's too late. The next morning, the doctor brings her some food and starts to feed her. Sophie takes her chance and manipulates him into untying her.
Thank you.
Just when he does, she grabs that knife by the plate and tries to stab him, but he holds her wrists,
Why would you do that?
stopping her attempt. He breaks down in front of her and whines about everything that he's done for her. Sophie challenges him, telling him to kill her if he had the
No
courage.
woman is ever gonna love you.
Well, she brought that one on herself, because he then goes downstairs and pulls out his fancy surgery tool set. And he's preparing to just cut her limbs off instead of entirely ending her life. But Sophie manages to untie herself before he gets to her, and when he walks back into the room, she smacks him on the head with a lamp and runs out of there. She tries to unlock the door to get out, but she can't do it. Dr. Beck catches up to her, with Sophie fighting back. She starts pummeling him with a golf club. Got a nice range of usable weapons in this house. Love it. And now he's saying how he loves her, but we don't get to hear the end of that because she knocks him out. She grabs the car keys from his pocket and finally escapes. Nice. So she drives home to find everyone present there for her funeral. I have no idea what I would do in that situation. Obviously, everyone's in shock when they see her walk in. Jim and Adrian tear up and hug their daughter tight. Sophie looks over to Ryan, who ditches that walking stick and runs to embrace her. The police break into the doctor's house in search of the man who now holds way too many criminal charges against him. But there's no sign of him. And that's because he's waiting for his new date at a restaurant in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. I don't know, my personal opinion, maybe she should have just knocked him a lot harder with that golf club. But that's the way it ended. To the end, this was produced by Johnson Production House. The movie starred Eric Roberts and Brianna Joy Comer. Let us know in those comments with the hashtag Cinema Recap. Till next time.